You sure? Nothing?
Not yet. I keep refreshing it.
No.
Yeah, here we go.
It says live. Yeah.
We're live now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good afternoon.
We're good to go.
Are you there? I've had notification.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay. Right. Good afternoon and welcome to Real Talk. This afternoon we have quite a few gentlemen on board, and we're going to talk about equality and injustice. So I'll let them introduce themselves to you. My name's Hyacinth from the Chayah Development Project and the Omega New Grace Ministries. We have, start introducing yourselves, Ramel.
Yep, so my name's Ramel. I work for Nottinghamshire Police as a youth outreach worker, and I work with 10 to 18-year-olds that are either involved in crime, vulnerable or socially excluded.
Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin. I'm an outreach worker for the Chayah Development Project here in Nottingham.
Jerome.
Hey, afternoon. Name's Jerome. I'm director of Matthew 2540, primarily working with homeless and vulnerable people in and across Nottingham.
Alex.
Alex Richard, Safe Alternative Centre.
Richard.
Richard McRae, independent councillor in Stapleford, and I'm also a proud member of the Universal Zulu Nation.
And Sajid.
Hi, I'm a director of HIMA, a racial justice and poverty charity based in the city, and I'm also a Labour councillor for the Mappy ward.
Good afternoon and welcome to all of you. Today we're going to talk about a variety of things around equality and injustice. Over the last week, we've had the slaughtering of George Floyd, and numerous other things have happened to the BME community. It's hard-hitting and it's hard to swallow. And so we're just going to have an open talk about, how it feels being in the BME community. And Richard, we're not excluding you because we know that you've worked with the BME community and you know how they're feeling, and you've been a doorman, so you've worked in the city. So we're gonna talk about that. So would anyone want to open? I'll throw a question out. In New York, in America right now, the looting and what is happening, do you think that justifies or that will help towards getting a good outcome to George's death? Richard?
Now, I was going to say, obviously, looting and rioting, you can't condone it, but I can understand it myself. When I watch it, it's horrible. I don't want to see someone's business getting smashed up. I know it's not around here and it doesn't affect us around here, but it's in the world, and the world ain't that big, and I've got friends out there, and businesses are being affected. It's horrible to see. But at the same time, I could kind of understand, because people are angry. They've got all this hatred and anger that's built up because of the way people have been treated. It's an outlet, and I'm not saying that is an excuse, because it isn't, and they shouldn't be doing it. Take up boxing or something like that. That's an outlet. But the thing is, people are just so wound up and so angry. What else can they do? Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I don't condone what they're doing, but I can kind of see and understand why. But I don't agree with it. Not with looting. Why I wouldn't tell people, let's go down Stapleford and smash up the shops because we're angry. Because it's your own community, your own business. We're supposed to uphold our community. But like I said, I can understand, because people are angry, and it's just sad, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. But for me, when it comes to the looting, I think that's just a handful of protesters taking it too far and exploiting the situation. And doing them things because they can, because the police ain't there to control it, because there's too many people out on the ground. So they're just taking advantage of the situation, going through the shops, i.e. them, that few minority, because they can. Otherwise, if the police was there, had control of the situation, they wouldn't be looting. Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay. Anyone else want to throw something into that? Okay, because I'm looking at it, all the writing that's happening, it's not just the BME that's writing at the moment, but it is the BME that's getting the brunt of the stick. Now, a peaceful movement like Black Lives Matters, they like peaceful movements, you know. Why the looting? You know, we've got, what are we showing our youth? What examples are we giving to them? I mean, Ramel, you're working with the cadets and like that.
Yeah.
And you're trying to show them positive ways of dealing with conflict. Them seeing this, what does that do?
Again, it unsettles people, and it kind of shows, again, I know that we're saying there's a mixture of cultures involved, but again, it's showing the Black community in a bad light and showing those stereotypes again, where, you know, this tragic man, you know, this tragic case has happened and he's died, and we're focusing on the negatives of it and not looking at actually what can we do to come out of this. And by rioting and other things, it is making the situation worse. And as Richard said, I think we do need to look at the stuff we're doing around positive activities and diversion, so the young people do have more things to do and to keep them occupied, and actually try and work with the police and the community rather than against, because it's always going to be that us against them. And I think we do need to try and come together with, you know, this is very tragic, but we all do need to try and work together, not against each other. And as you said, with the riots and the looting, there's been innocent people who have been affected, they've had property damage, they've been harmed. And again, what message does that send to them, that they've done nothing wrong, yet they've felt the impact of what's happened?
I mean, my 10-year-old granddaughter has made a logo, which I'm using on my status. Black Lives Matters. She's 10, and she's in there, she put, life is hard. Now she's 10, and she's seen friends that we know that have passed away through to COVID. That was hard. And then they watch the news and they see this man's life being snuffed out of him. You know, how do we talk to our youth and explain to them that, you know, we can't say that's a one-off, because it's not been a one-off.
It won't be,
you know, but how do we affirm into them that, you know, it's not an everyday occurrence, but yet if we look at statistics in America, a Black person dies every day due to brutality from the police.
Yeah.
Matthew, I'll put that to you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think from my take, if we're talking stateside, it's really difficult for what we see on the screen. I know that there's been a lot of Black people showing majorities, or Caucasian people is actually doing a lot of the writing, and being able to give some sort of positive outcomes from what is going to happen after all this or during all of this is going to be incredibly difficult. It's going to be a long journey. It's not going to be a very easy journey. I think there's going to need to be a lot of growth from both sides. I don't have little ones, but I don't necessarily need to have little ones to see that it is incredibly a difficult message to say, hey, this is the culture of which we live within. Thankfully enough, there is, if I was to kind of bring it a little bit British side, we do have our own injustice of lack of diversity and lack of representation. And we've always been taught that you have to work twice as hard and you have to do things incredibly to the T in order to get on the same level as Caucasian counterparts. And who knows if within the few generations that will ever change, you know? So yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a longer answer. I've only seen what I've seen stateside through a screen, and everyone always has their own agenda with kind of what they're presenting, and it's really difficult to know whatever is true to life.
Okay, Alex, you've got any spin on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're kind of skirting around the truth of the matter. So people's being very I don't know what's the word to use. Diplomatic? I don't even know if diplomatic, but I think it's the wrong approach to take right now, because it's I believe we're in a serious time. Yeah, to tell a young person, yeah, about a peaceful protest when throughout our history, our spokespeople, our leaders, whoever it is, have been assassinated through peaceful protests. Yeah, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, yeah, they was assassinated. Yeah, they was killed through peaceful protest. So what we're seeing right now is Black people still being lynched, yeah, by the police force. We're still seeing that happening. So lynching hasn't changed. Slavery hasn't changed. Racism hasn't changed. It's just changed forms. And we need to get real and stop being on the fence about what's actually taking place. And we need to stop pulling down the power structures that are economically controlling racism and oppressing Black people within this society. And until we get to that position, there's no message to tell young people, because they're not stupid. Yeah. So we're looking at young people as though we're not in a time of information where they can go and resource this information themselves. Yeah, nothing hasn't changed. It's just being televised, as Will Smith says, or it's just being filmed now. Yeah. So when we're looking at racism itself, as I've been saying over and over again, it's an economical power structure that kills, controls, and prevents the progress of another community. Yeah. And this is what we're facing, and this is what we need to be tackling. And if we're coming together as an organization and as a people, this is what the message needs to be very clear. There's no going around it. We can see what it is. And when you break it down on any level, racism, it all boils down to economics and our social class, social structure, and all the rest of it. So there's no building platform for the next generation, because they're clearly showing us that all our contributions that we've done globally and even in the UK, yeah, are being, to nothing. They don't respect us. There's nothing. You see what I mean? And even like I've said for myself, going through certain things with local authorities and even the police, and trying to apply for certain things that is for our community, that should be for our community. And also, let me just state this, yeah, that racism is only for Black people. Yeah, it's not Black, Asian, it's not all of the other races, it's for Black people only. And that
can I stop you there? Let's bring Sajid in on that.
I'll stop you there as well.
That can be proven.
Let me bring Sajid in on this. Sajid.
Can I just finish and say that can be proven historically, yeah, that racism was designed and set only for Black people.
You had me until you just said that.
Hold on, Sajid. Let's bring Sajid in onto this, because
it's a fact. It's not had you. You need to know your history if you disagree with it.
Well, firstly, thank you, Chayah, for inviting me to this debate. So I think the two questions have been set around, what's going on in the States and reflecting on what's happening in the UK. So there's and the approach to dealing with the situation we find ourselves in. So I think the previous speaker, my brother, spoke lots of truths, and I might have disagreed with one or two of them, but he spoke, I think, very passionately. And one has to take the view of racism, not from now, which is 100% correct, but one needs to look through the long arc of history.
Right.
And one will see that it came through empire, it came through a colonial process. So we had academics, mainly based in Oxford, about 400 years ago, who came out with the race theory that some races were superior to others. This then, as it does, most people from Oxford, as it did then and as it does now, end up in Parliament. they end up in the world's businesses and commerce. And this theory is incredibly useful if you want to enslave nations and steal all their resources, because it basically says these people haven't got the agency to run their own civilizations. These people have no right. We're superior. We need to go over to their country to civilize them. And they call this the white man's burden. So it's all in historical documents. So they deemed it necessary to go to India, to go to Africa, to go all over the world, to the Occident, South America, and to enslave us, to rob us. And this process has evolved from the very brutal soldiers that were on foreign soil to an economic power model, which it is today. Now, so that happened. So wherever the European powers went, they built these models. And it's also, we now, as the recipients of the historical recipients of it, call it divide and rule. Yeah, that they went around and they went to the Tutsis, your royalty, and they went to the Tutsis and they said, you're scum. And they got two identical African ethnic groups. They're one ethnic group, which was one side of the family was given power by the French and the other wasn't. And that carried on for years and years after the French had left, that they got the Tutsis to commit the genocide. So this has been ongoing. So we all know, I want to bring this in to the stateside, that the transatlantic slavery was about Britain taking poor quality goods, dropping it off to West Africa, picking up slaves, taking the slaves, taking human beings, women, children, people's mums, dads, brothers and sisters, aunties, stealing them, killing millions, the single biggest historic genocide that we don't talk about, killing millions of people. That's just in the process of shipping them from West Africa to the Caribbean and to South America and to the United States of America. Then once they were there, brutalizing people to a state where they were completely dehumanized so they could work on plantations for sugar and cotton, which Britain and America then got and then shipped back to Europe and made millions. When you look at buildings like Woollerton Hall and you look at these stately homes, they were built on the death, on the blood and the sweat of Black and Asian people. And I want to take the issue with the previous speaker, my brother said, and I'll quote Malcolm X. Malcolm X said, after the transatlantic slavery, the second greatest act of oppression and Holocaust was British India. And people don't know British Indian history. My family was sold into slavery 200 years ago by the British. Every man, woman, child in Kashmir was sold into slavery. The Britain sold the whole state of Kashmir. And we were brutalized, absolutely brutalized, denied education, indented slaves in agriculture for 200 years until the partition of India happened.
Okay, Sajid.
In recent times, I need to make this clear. In recent times, we're talking in the lifetime. 5 million people were starved to death during World War II, so that the British government and the British Army took flour and rice out of India, particularly in Bengal, so that Europeans and white soldiers could eat. They killed over 5 million. The Holocaust isn't recorded, isn't debated. So when people talk about racism is only for black people, it's correct for political black. We've only ever fought racism under the identity of political black, being non-white people, Occidental people who have experienced colonialism and empire and brutalization. So political black is us. And if we're going to go forward, then I wholeheartedly believe in the non-violence movement of Gandhi, of Dr. Martin King, etc. But I just want to make something clear, and I think it's an important distinction. We can never condone violence. But when a community for 400, 500 years have never experienced anything else but systematic state violence, then what do you want them to do? They have only ever learned violence. And people need to reflect on that. And it hasn't stopped. From the Emancipation Act, it turned into Jim Crow, and it's turned into the commoditization of black people through economic and power structures. And that's why the incarceration rate, black people going to prison, is just another form of slavery.
Okay, let's take it. Go on then, Alex.
Just jump in and say the reason why I say for black people by design, as I agree with a lot of what Sajid has just said, is because he's talking about 200 years. We know that black slavery is going back over 400 years. Yeah, and also a bit of black British history for you is the reason why black people are marching for reparations even to this day is because when slavery was abolished in the UK, yeah, they paid out every other race and culture other than the black community. The black community wasn't given land, they wasn't given business, yeah, they wasn't given anything to survive with. They was told that you're free now as a slave, yeah, whilst every other community had a foothold in society and was able to build on their social class. The black community wasn't given anything. Yes, and we know by design that this is for black people only. I'm not saying that obviously, like Sajid said, later on, yeah, they might have enslaved some more. But originally, this is for black people. And the focus primarily right now, worldwide, black males are being killed. Black Asians aren't being lynched like black males.
Okay,
nowhere in the world.
Let's take this to Jerome.
So I hear both what you both have said, and my thing is we can talk. People are watching this right now, and I don't think either of what either of you have said is groundbreaking to anybody. What, as I said to Chayah when she invited me onto the call this morning, the heart of what we have to do here is progress the conversation. If I had a little one, or if I had a younger person, and I said, hey, this is where we've come from, the information of which I'm bestowing upon that person causes that person to look backward. Yes, we need to look backward in order to look forward. But if that person continues with that, the knowledge, knowing, the resentment, and continues with the resentment.
There's no resentment.
Let me breathe. So if there is an element of disdain or an element of racism to say because of a person's skin color or what they've done historically to our race, there's not going to be an element of finding a common ground. Yes, there has been.
But that's because you're defining racism under the wrong context.
I didn't interrupt you. Not one time. I dropped a message into the group.
But if you're going to speak wrong, then I've got to correct you because you're not defining.
Thanks, Al. So I have no issue with saying that what has happened systemically is still now in place. That is evident. That is evident. The fact that we now need to say, okay, fine, we as Black people, as well as people that are the majority that have profited from the enslavery, as the councillor said, what are we going to do in order to educate both sides to say, okay, what do we now need to do in order to better engage with the powers that be, as well as what can the powers that be better engage? If we essentially engage with what is currently happening, with peaceful protests of which aren't working, with violence of which we both disagree with, there is a point of where we're going to be at a stalemate because we don't have the answers. The answers, unfortunately, stay with the higher power in order to say, okay, fine, if I hold all the chips, there's nothing of which you are going to do, of which I'm going to then divvy up the chips. I understand that's why you therefore say racism cannot be given to people that don't necessarily have the power, because there is no, it's a bit of a power struggle. If a black man has no power, they therefore cannot be racist. But 100%. what I want for us as a people, both white and black, to realize, regardless of where the power dynamic lays, if I have a particular discrimination towards your race, there will be already a disconnect.
There's no discrimination against. Look, yeah, this is where people get this equality and all of that.
Did you understand what I said? Did you understand?
I understand exactly what you've just said. Cool. Yeah, but what you're trying to do is divert from the actual truth again.
What? How so?
And that is how, I mean, talking around the subject rather than just going direct. Everything that's been said in the last two comments just shows you direct the root cause.
We know what the root cause is. The root cause.
You know, the thing is, for me, the thing is, we need to know the roots, but we also need to move forward.
We need to move forward.
If we keep looking backwards, we're not going to go forward.
But we cannot do this.
We have a generation of young people who thinks violence is the answer, and we know it's not. And for me, it's not about just Black Lives Matter. It's about all lives matter. Yeah,
that's
because
not true.
That's
not true.
All lives matter. All lives matter, Alex. It doesn't matter whether you believe that or not.
Unfortunately, it's just not the case, because we're the ones being killed all over the world.
We are, but you know what? You have to set an example. You have to set an example, and you can't always, two wrongs don't make a right.
No, it doesn't. But who's killing us?
Can I ask
Sometimes we're doing it ourselves.
Exactly. But who orchestrated this?
You see, the thing about it is we need to wisen up and stop saying that. The thing about
it's history, I think. We can't get away from it. We're just seeing it happen to us. We can't get away from it because it's being presented to us even now in 2020.
It's called history.
No, 2020, someone's just been lynched.
Okay, let's move on. Right. For me, I say all lives matter. I don't care. All lives matter. Because at the end of the day, we're living in blended families right now, and all lives matter. Because as far as I'm concerned, everybody, I see you, Jermaine, everybody has the right to live. I'm going to take this to Richard, because you live in an area, Richard, and we're talking about Eastwood this morning, where things are happening there. And, people are losing their lives as well. And at the end of the day, we're talking about grieving families. We're talking about people ended up with mental health because of what's happening around us. And I'm saying that we can't wait and say it's the government, it's the authorities. We have to take onus into our own hands. Richard, you're in Stapleford and you've had the same thing happening up there. Yeah. Explain to the rest of what's about Stapleford. And I know we're talking about lives matter. I'm not talking about Black lives. I'm talking about lives. Richard.
Yeah. So what is it exactly you want to know again?
The issues that we've got in Eastwood.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, knife crime's a thing at the minute, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be anywhere. And I think we've got. There is problems. There's problems with drugs. You've heard me say this before. It's not so bad at the minute because the council's doing stuff. Obviously, the police are always doing stuff. But I've been in the past. I've been in council meetings and stood up. And I'm not here to slate councillors. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to name names. People know who they are. And I've been in meetings in the past and I've stood up and I've spoke about drugs in areas and that. Councillors have got up and walked out the room because they don't want to listen to it, and it's like sticking your head in the sand. I've spoke about gangs and knife crime and stuff like that. People have said it shouldn't be on the agenda, you shouldn't be speaking about it as a councillor. Well, why shouldn't we? The community should be speaking about it. And I've always said, I'm an independent councillor. That doesn't mean doing stuff on my own. It means I can work with anybody. I didn't want to be in a party because I want to work with all the parties. I didn't want to join another group because I want to work with all the groups. So to me, independent means working with everybody. And I will. And you know what I'm like. I don't do that. Oh, I can't come and work with you guys because you're in St Anne's, that's in the city, and I'm in the county. I don't play that game. It's how can we say to the youngsters, stop falling out about postcodes? And I did it when I was younger. We used to fall out with people from other areas. It's gone on for ages. But how can we say to the youngsters, stop falling out when we're doing it as adults? I said this last week, we try and get funding. Oh, you can't have that because you're in the city. You can't have that because you're in the county. You can't have that because you're in that area. You're not in this area. So we need to lead by example, and we need to be saying, look, if that funding is available, let's put that funding into where it's needed, not, oh, you're in the wrong postcode. Because we did have a meeting last night, community safety at the council, and we spoke about different areas. Eastwood's been an area where there's been some issues up there. I'm not saying something that people don't know. It's out there in the public domain. I wouldn't speak about stuff that we're not allowed to because I don't want to get into trouble. But there's problems up there. So we need to be doing projects in the schools. We need to be doing projects in the youth clubs. And the other thing is we need to be doing projects on the street. If the kids are hanging around on the street, they ain't going to come to you. We've got to go to them. And that's back to what I said last week. We did this in Stapleford, working with Justin when we worked with some of the youngsters, working with Highsmith when we worked with some of the youngsters, and it worked because, and I'm repeating myself again, but crime was up here and we got it right down there. So if we did it in Stapleford, it works. And I know you've done it up your way, it works. Then we need to go Eastwood and do it because it will work.
Okay, Sajid, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from what Brother Alex was saying. I actually agree with him to a large extent, but I disagree in how he's articulated the argument. So I just want to make that clear. So all lives matter, absolutely, but not all lives are equal and not all lives have the same privilege. And we need to recognize something called societal institutional racism. So I'm not talking about racism, which is like my wife went to the local Sainsbury's and my 2-year-old daughter was with her and a man chucked a trolley at her and called her an effing P, effing get out my country, you fuck P, etc. Yeah? I'm not talking about that type of racism. That's just the tip of the iceberg. 80% of it, that's just individual transactions whose brains have been affected by this disease, which is perpetuated by the media and politicians and funded by very, very wealthy individuals. I'm talking about the structural stuff, the stuff that we call unconscious bias that has informed policy and law in this country. Because there's no other explanation why Black Asian people have health outcomes, which there's like 20, 30 years disparity. For example, I'll give you an example. So a 65 plus to 70-year-old's health is the equivalent to a African Caribbean's man's health at 40 and equivalent to an Asian Pakistani man's health at the age of 30. These can't be explained away. We can't explain why we get stopped and searched 4 or 5 times more than our white counterparts. We can't explain any other way why white women are an 80% pay gap. There's only 20% difference in their pay gap, whilst there's 30-odd%, 40% difference between Black, and I use political Black and Asian men's pay, and Black women are even below that. You can't explain this. This is through policy, legislation, and design. Now, the only way we've ever resolved this, and we can go into housing, we can look, Theresa May did one good thing. She promised, she delivered on a promise that was absolutely in the 1975 race relation, and 2017, she delivered the promise. She publicly produced a race audit to show the disparities in every single policy area in this country, from housing to health to employment to criminal justice system. People just need to read the document. That's from the Office of National Statistics. That's official British document. Yeah, they can read the Lamy report if you want to go into depth about the criminal justice system. The only way historically we ever got emancipation, and I'm even talking back home, if one looks at South Africa, it was Black and Asian people working together. Wherever there's been a majority, like for example, in South Asia or in some African states, the overwhelming majority of those people are from one or two ethnic groups. But where there's diverse communities, like America and Western Europe, we have to go under the banner of political Black. We bring people together, and we also build broad alliances with our white allies. This is exactly the conversations that Malcolm X was having in his later life. And that's why he was assassinated. These are the exact conversations that Dr. King was having. That's why he was assassinated. And we can go through it. We need to build broad alliances, and we need to do action. We don't do protests. We need to do action. Look what Dr. King did. Look what Gandhi did. They were taxing salt, so he went and made his own salt. Look what Dr. King did. Look what Rosa Parks did. We take direct and non-direct action, but in a non-violent way. She sat on the bus, at the front of the bus. We sat in CAFs, where they were only designed for white people, designated, and we sat there. You know, we did it with the transport on the buses. So we got to do this. We got to take non-violent direct action, and we need to organize, and we all need to come together, and white and Black together, to change the law so we get better laws that work for us, that people actually deliver on the Equalities Act. The law hasn't never been delivered. And we get better representation. The question is, all lives matter, but not all lives get justice, and we want justice.
Okay,
Jerome?
Like,
clean. I'm trying to articulate and pull everything together, but diversity is one of the biggest things. One of the knee-jerk reactions to one of the things of which Said, and I may be jumping way ahead of the lines, but I can see it. I've seen the way in which a few of my family engage with that, is we as minorities pull together and feel that the best way to progress is being for Black, by Black, serving Black, or minorities, or be for Asian, whatever, for minorities, by minorities, and being exclusive in our own thing. Just to piggyback and to expand and emphasize exactly what you were just saying, the only way in which we are going to be able to progress as a world, as a human race, yes, Black lives have been proven to be at a lower worth, of which is disgusting, due to exactly as what you was saying, Alex, due to what this world has built upon. The only way in which we're going to move forward is by figuring out, okay, fine, we do need to have a lot more better representation, more diversity in those places that are higher. My problem is now, and this is where I get a little bit of a dead end, those people that provide those higher positions of power are owned by white males. The Me Too movement has been talking about this. BLM have been talking about this. And at that point, I come a crop up, because I see the past, and I see where we want to go into the future. Even if we, all of us, were to say this is the objective, this is what we want to aim towards, and we were to rally, we can protest. But at the end of the day, somebody at the top is going to end up having the power in order to say, okay, yes, cool, here is my signature to sign off on somebody that signs off on equalities legislator, ensure that the equalities have gone through, or some of the reparations act for America all the way seen through. And that is where, unfortunately, I come a cropper. Yeah, I'll stop there. I've something else to say, but it becomes a little bit more God related.
Okay, Justin.
Can I say something, please, Miss Chayah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, sat here listening to the convos and, everybody going and speaking about history and all them things. You know what? Thank you very much, because you've all just educated me. But from where I come from and what I see with my simple mind on whatever is that, you know what? All races suffer racism, whether you're black, white, Chinese or Asian. You know, I've been in the jailhouse. I've seen the Aki boys bully the white boys. I've seen the white boys bully the black boys. I've seen the Chinese boys bully the Asian boys. I've seen it all. So whether it's political racism or whether it's just normal racism, all races suffer racism in some way, shape or form. So regardless where it stems from or where it's at, all races are suffering the same thing. So like for me, it's about finding the way forward to stamp it out, stop it. And obviously the key is educating people and letting them know in the 21st century, not in 1852.
I mean, I think that's the problem, that definition of racism. And this is why we can't move forward, because you're describing discrimination against other races. That's not racism. That's just racist. So a racist is somebody that loves their own race, and loves their own race more than others. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be at the harm of other races. Racism is a completely different context. So it's just like you saying, discriminating against someone else for any other thing, that's a mine, and people aren't being killed or oppressed or systematically controlled by that. Only black people are being controlled via racism. Only.
Okay, well,
there's no other race that can be. There's no other race that can be.
I would call that.
Like I was trying to explain, for people like me, that have just been educated through everything that you lot have been saying, some people haven't got that knowledge, haven't got that education.
That's what I'm saying. That's why they need to get it.
Listen to it. So therefore, we fall beyond. I don't know, how can I put it, like, we don't know how to distinguish between racism and being racist then, So therefore, for me, for my simple mind, like I explained, for me, racism, being racist is anybody, from the black community picking on the white community, or anybody from the white community picking on the black community, or just because your skin color's different, you receive trouble for it. So for me and a lot of people out here that are from this walk of life, they don't really know what this racism really is.
I think you have to chime in on the political racism. I think
break it down like that to say, do you know what? All right, then I listen to everything what you say, but when I walk out on the street, if I walk in to say hands, I'll see the black boys picking on the white boys because there's more black people. If I walk in, to say, Forest Fields, I'll see the Asian boy picking on the white boy or picking on the black boy because there's more Asian. To me, that's racism. That's people being racist. And that is probably probably about 80% of the people that are watching and listening to this have probably got the same perception, because education is key. Like you say, I'm 36 years old, and you know what? It's not like I'm a dumb kid, but like I said, I've just sat here and been educated myself. So you've got to be mindful of them people that don't really understand and don't really get a grasp. You've got to break it down in simpler terms. But I'm just explaining that, where I come from and the people that I'm around and represent, racism comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's from all colours and all I don't know.
And that's because of
Can I bring Ramal into this, please? Because Ramal, you're working with young people. Yeah. And I know you've just heard what the panel's just said. What would you say to the education, moving forward, the roots to it? What would you say?
It's a very, very complex issue. I work with a lot of young people, and some of them are struggling with their identity and knowing about the history and where they come from. And I think all of us need to take responsibility for where we fall short. Certainly the police, certainly parents, social care, local authority. I think there's lots of us that need to accept responsibility for where, we could do a lot more to help young people and educate them. So I think certainly through schools, through people like Alex and others and Sajid that do have the knowledge, we need to give these people more of a platform, and we need to talk about these issues in order to move forward and educate our young people.
Well, how would we educate the police? Because they seem to be the ones that are lacking in education or knowledge of how to treat other cultures. We sat on an IAG meeting, and we mentioned, as Black people, they're coming to raid elder's house. They knock the door down. You go into any Black woman's house, you got to take your shoes off when you get to the hallway. Yeah. They're running up and down her house, disrespecting her house with their shoes on, turning her house upside down, and just saying, sit down. You can't talk to our elders like that.
No, of course not.
Those kind of things can incite a lot of issues, especially with our youngsters.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we are where we are today with the lack of trust in the police, exactly what you've said. So in terms of new recruits, so new people coming in, they do get all that exposure, as you know, to the community and understanding the needs and being sensitive to different cultures. So I think that is embedded in our new recruits. However, we obviously have this existing group of officers, and I'm not going to lie, there is still issues around institutional racism within the police. I'll be completely honest, and people like myself and other people who are working with the community, we're working as hard as we can from the inside to expose any of these people that are doing wrong. And I think a common frustration for me and also for the community is that sometimes when we've got things wrong, which does happen, we get things wrong and there's tactics being used that shouldn't be used at all anywhere, people don't complain. And sometimes we hear about these stories after the fact, whether it's 2 weeks later, whether it's 2 years later. And to be quite frank, some of these bad officers that are out there are getting away with it because they're staying under the radar, because people don't trust us. They feel that if they make a complaint to the police, it's not going to be dealt with fairly or just. So I want to, reassure people that if there are things that they're not happy with, that they can come and speak to us, and we will deal with any complaints seriously. Because I think at the moment there's such a lack of trust, and that leads to things like with the issues with knife crime, where a young person stabbed and we rock up and people don't want to talk to us, and they're like, where were you for the rest of the year before this happened? We told you about these issues. No one's there to help us. So actually, by building trust with the community, they're more likely to open up to us and tell us things that are going on, and we can solve some of these issues around racism and around knife crime and around some of the problems going on.
Okay, Richard, do you trust the police?
Yeah, the ones I know I do, because I work with them as well. But, yes, I do, the ones I work with, yeah. I can't say I don't. I do, yeah, I do. And perhaps they treat me differently. I don't know, because, I sit on the police panel and all that. Do you know what I mean? I'd go and tell Paddy if they didn't. But joking aside, I think one of the important things is, like when you did that session up at the Chayah base, where the new recruits came along, and they all walked in and they sat there, and one of them, and I don't remember his name, but he stood out, and everybody said that because everybody came in and all the police sat in their little group, and then the rest of us were sat where we were. And then that one, it was a male police recruit, I can't remember his name, and he actually walked around, can you remember? And he introduced himself to everybody, and he was the only one that did it. Fantastic. And the rest of them just sat there. But then after that, everybody started mingling and that, and it was important. And I remember I think there was the Chinese ladies that was there, and they were saying, like how you says about the shoes and everything, and they was explaining what they like and what they don't like, So yeah, that's important, and we can keep doing that. Now the lady that organised that's contacted me since, and she wants to come and do it in Stapleford, but obviously at the minute we can't. I assume it's You're ringing me on your phone. That's weird. I'm talking on here. Actually, she looks like she's froze. She might have been locked out of the meeting. I'll answer the phone to her in a minute. So what was I going to say? So yeah, that's important that we do things like that, as Rommel said. Get the recruits out in the community, and it needs to be the whole community because they never know where they're going to work. And the other thing that came from that meeting, I think it was actually, I'm sure it was Justin's idea, and we need to get him on Dragon's Den because was it Justin that said shoes for the police dogs? Can you remember?
Yeah, because obviously, like I said, when I'm in the jailhouse and everything's there, like, and they used to come and spin my salons, I won't go behind that door. Take me to the block because that dirty dog's been on my bed, been all over it, put his bum on my bed, and it's the same for, you know, a lot of Black and Asian people. They don't have them kind of things in the house. So yeah, we come up with the concept of, you know what, why can't we get little forensic shoes?
Has it locked you out?
A little few capes for the sniffer dogs. So when they come and raid a house, if they have to bring a dog into the house, for something, put the little boots on and put a little cape on. So if they brush past your furniture, they're not leaving the scent of the oils within your house. And if they stand on your bed, they're not putting, you know, the paws that they've been walking around the street and standing in wee and poo and the bacterias on your things, innit? So we come up with that good, simple solution. And yeah, hopefully somebody listened. And hopefully, you know, when we see somebody's dog get took off, the dogs will all have shoes and a white forensic coat on.
Yeah, right, just a quick one. Hyacinth's been booted out because I think her Wi-Fi's gone, so I'm hosting at the minute. She's trying to get back in. But we've just had a message on the live thing on the internet off Benjamin Rosser. We all know him. He was like into the prettiest policeman that Nottingham's ever had or something like that. Anyway, he's put police education when they join is vital. Well said, Rommel. So that's pretty cool. And then he's put an independent panel with teeth need to work alongside the police. Hold to account this panel. Most have representatives from BAME community. The panel must be able to affect action or just be a token jester. So yeah, so that's off Benjamin, yes.
Could I go back to Ramel, and the question that Hyacinth asked before she dipped out? She says, what could something along the line about what could the police be taught or the training of the police? Yeah. Now, what I want to throw out to Ramel is, do you actually know how the police actually was formed years ago, way back?
No, not the beginning.
The police, was effectively those people that rode around on horses, and shot and caught slaves, and was paid, by wealthy slave owners in order to catch slaves. Did you know that? That's history. So you can have a look at that for yourself. Yeah. So that when you're looking at the training and the history that needs to be taught to the police force in order to change the systematic power structures, we're talking about going way back there, showing that as the history, and bringing it right forward to where they're supposed to be today, which is to be public servants.
Yeah, no, fair point.
You see what I mean? And then we will start to see that sort of change.
I didn't know that piece of history. I was thinking about, I've got a few points on that. So you bring up that piece of history for what point?
You bring it up because you can see that the same action and behavior in the power structure of killing and murdering and bringing back or capturing, was in history, rooted in history, that was actually what the police force was at the time. It wasn't under that banner, but it was under. It was under.
Sorry, go on. Go.
It was just under those men that used to ride around. You know those old films that you used to see, with the men sheriffs or whatever they're called, or whatever, go and catch bad guys or whatever like that. That is where that's the history or the root of the police force being formed.
Tons, cool. I hear that. My thing is, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Stanford experiment, and I've only watched it through a film, and I do need to do a little bit more Googles based on the psychology about it. Basically, they banged some people in, I think it's about 20 people in a false prison. They gave 10 people power of prison and 10 people the position of prisoner. mixture of people, and after the course of a period of time, essentially the people with the power started to assert their power on the prison guard, and then the roles flipped, and you could see how essentially power corrupts. And I'm not saying that the history has diddly squat to do with what has been perpetuated now, but I do believe there is an element of power that corrupts people in general. Unfortunately, the majority of the police force are white. And then I'd also put this cherry on top. The media and what we all ingest, along with people across the globe, which also include police officers, what they ingest is the media. And the media, I'm reading a book called The Community by Peter Block. And he says the media are only able to effectively seem as the media if they're showing negative. Yeah. The media doesn't seem positive. Sorry, the media doesn't seem like media unless it is negative. And the negative thing is, of which seems to be in trend, minorities that are doing negative things. So as soon as a person, whether it's black, white, whatever, engages with a minority, there is already a pre-programmed stereotype of which we all go through the process of which is being programmed into all of us, which is horrible. Who knows how it's going to be crumbled? We need to control. Here's a solution. We need to control our own media. And I don't mean we as in black people, I mean we as the community need to control our own media. We need to show how what Chayah has been doing. We need to show what Richard's been doing, what Council's been doing, what Mamel is doing. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to really essentially show exactly what's being done in the community. But we'll see how quickly some negative media is portrayed. And that way we can then start to change the narrative of which has been placed on minorities all the time. The same high as not here.
We've got no questions now then, have we? Let me have a look what's on. I'm looking on the poster that she made for the event because I think it had some questions on it. Just give me 1 second.
One of the things that I would like to throw out, going back to that inclusion and diversity point that was made, I think, by yourself earlier. Is it Jerome?
Yeah.
Was I think that has been the illusion of inclusion, as what has been blinding our people from being able to come together.
Okay, that's weird. Okay.
And the fact that
I will do.
We as a people, are diverse and we are embracive of every other culture, other than our own, has caused this long everlasting fight or struggle that we can't unite under anything because we're too busy and too concerned, about every other race and culture's opinion and acceptance of us in their society, that we do not want to unite as a black people, and fight the black cause of racism. We don't want to do that. And when it gets real like that, you find that people want to dip out and duck away. But the reality is, we have to unite for one cause. We can't unite for all of the other races that aren't being killed globally, oppressed globally. We have to fight for our own cause because there's no one else standing up for you other than your own mouth, that is going to express exactly how you feel as a black person in living in a society in which we are being oppressed.
I agree. Please don't think that I have a response. Please don't think that because I have a response, I'm trying to detract away from what you just said, because I completely agree. Like the fact that we are very concerned about other, and we want to financially fund the likes of, for instance, let's just talk about where we shop. We need food. we shop at the large supermarkets and we don't shop at the locals. That is one thing of which I've always been able to sit back and look and be just like, yo, Mr. Walgreens is chopping a big thing. And if we were able to bring it back to, but anyway, my concern with that, if it's not thought through and articulated well enough, what it then becomes is by minorities, for minorities, by minorities, and then it essentially becomes the reverse of the same thing of which we were trying to get away with. Because say if we did manage to get a ton of wealth and power, then the roles would essentially flip. And then if this whole thing went along for another 2 centuries, then the majorities will be the minorities, and then all of a sudden it will be white lives matter. And then we won't necessarily be...
Yeah. But when you're looking at the root of all history again, yeah, the father and mother of humanity, yeah, is the black woman and the black man. So when we go right back to that, yeah, and then we look at building from that premise, we understand that what you're saying, yes, there's a potential, yeah, for the reverse if it's taken the wrong way, but it's out of love. This is what I'm trying to say to you. Truth.
That's a good word.
Truth and spirituality, yeah, is birthed out of love. So when I'm speaking now, I can speak what I'm speaking, yeah, and go outside and shake another race's hand, because what I'm speaking on is just truth. There's no agenda that's behind that. It's just truth. Now, when we're looking at our history and the reason behind they've hidden, yeah, systematically broken down a particular community, yeah, you have to ask yourself, what premise is that from?
See, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm a big believer in Jesus, in Father, and in the Holy Spirit. I think all of this right now is some sort of shake up for the world to say, guys, you need to understand that I am your Father. I am the way, the truth, the use of the truth, and the life, and focusing on love. So yeah, I'll put that. I don't know how necessarily, I ain't got that far yet to figure how racism is against that, but I know it is against love, and I know it is against peace, and I know it is against all of that, and that's all I'll say on that, you know.
And the driving force, just as you touched religion just there, yeah, the driving force behind that has been faith in Christianity, because of the premise of the fact that the way that the Bible was formed, if you understand Christianity, the way that was formed in history, yeah, and the truth that is not spoken about within that book, yeah, is why we're in this position now. So when you're looking at the fact that, you know, Jesus is painted on the wall as a white Christ, yeah, and black people are then told to pray to that God. These are one of the reasons, because everything to do with oneself has been stripped away. And then we are looking to a white savior, yeah, which then takes us away from our black self. Yeah. And if that book was taught in its proper history and root from where it was from, which is in Africa, Ethiopia, yeah. If we took it back and realized that all of those names that was changed, Noah's and Matthew's and John's and all of that, yeah, that didn't exist, but the stories were truth and spiritual concepts that were taken from Africa, then we would start to undig or go to the root cause of why our actual race and why racism is so predominant, yeah, in today's society. So it's not staying back in history, but it's unveiling the truth. Unveiling the truth, will bring us back to that position of love where you was talking about just.
Can I ask something, Alex?
Yes,
what you're talking about is nothing new, but why has it taken us so long to establish, it's like, okay, we know the history. A lot of us know the history.
I don't think a lot of them do, Hyacinth.
A lot of people know the history, but we've not taught it. A lot of us know the history, but we've not looked at the future. I
don't think they know it, Hyacinth. Honestly, I'll tell you the truth.
Well, how do we go forward from here? How do we go forward from today?
In terms of where Jerome was just coming from, the churches, especially the Black Pentecostal ministers, need to start doing their history about the Bible and need to start teaching it to the Black community from the perspective that it's a Black history book, first and foremost. That needs to happen, yeah? For Black people then to be able to be identified and the agenda of racism taken out of religious institutions, yeah? Then to move forward again into society, the history of racism, the history of Black history needs to be taught properly and not from a Eurocentric point of view within schools or in communities, in order for all communities to have an awareness about who the original mothers and fathers of nature are.
Okay, so
when we go back there, sorry.
Is this something that within Safe Alternatives that you're teaching?
Is this something that I'm teaching now?
Yeah, within your project.
No, because I don't have a specific project right this moment that is actually designed for that. My project is a child contact center, and I do a childcare service and youth interventions. And it's almost being independent, yeah? And this is another thing, being independent without the support and backative because of institutional racism that prevents your organization from growth and establishment and resources that it needs. Yeah.
Alex, you know me. Let's go back. You know me. I've been doing projects since how long?
Right.
Yeah? And I never got an ounce of funding until 4 years ago. But yet I still did what I needed to do. Yeah. Money is important, but at the end of the day, I wasn't waiting on people's handouts. I knew something needed to be done. And even if I did it on a small scale, it was done. So we're talking about authority and institutionals. We take them out of the equation and look at we make an impact in our communities.
Correct. I agree with you. But what you need to understand is it's because of self-hatred. And this is what I'm trying to say. With the Black community, unveiling the truth and then unveiling racism and all the other things that contribute to our destruction, our community suffers with that self-hatred. So even I myself, like I haven't had that handout given to me, but I've been sustained for 5 years. Yes, and it has been a struggle. But the point is that in order for us to carry out such a move on such a level, it would mean that the community have an understanding about the root causes of economics and that pound being generated within our own communities in order for us to make that change. Pretty much like how the Asians do within their own community, but we don't have that in our community at all. So for us to put our neck on the line to be putting out them truths, would leave someone like myself independently without that backative open, to be exposed to any sort of trap or snare that they might want to present to myself and cause me to be in a position in which I'm not able to feed my own self or my own children.
Let me ask Justin. Let me ask Justin a question.
Yeah,
Justin. Yeah.
Yes,
you're mixed race, yeah?
Yeah, you're correct.
We're talking about this. How does it make you feel? Because then you're having to. It's like it's pulling you on two sides.
Well, to tell you the truth, like when it comes to religion, coming to race, gender, I was brought up on a white estate, as you all know. But at the same time, I don't let them things trouble me no more. I have to stay past them and keep moving forward. And like I say, for me, the key to get through to people is to educate them. All right, then the books and the Bibles and everything's been changed. I.e. saying Jesus is white, but you know what, really, one time he was black because obviously he's from the motherland. But at the same time, does it really matter? At the end of the day, when people look at Jesus as a symbol or look at Allah as a symbol, you know, they're all looking for the same thing. They're looking for hope, looking for, you know, for somebody to listen to them, you know. So it doesn't really matter what colour, whether Jesus is blue. Like, you know, it doesn't really matter to me. So my perception is, you know, I'm just going to keep moving forward. I'm not going to let things affect me. I don't want to dig up no stone that, you know what, might unleash a can of worms, like you say. You know, you've got to think, if you're going to make these kind of movements and move in said direction, what's the detrimental effect going to be on you and your community? What are they going to do, you know, for going against the grain? And that's what you have to look at, is the bigger, wider picture. Yeah, it's nice to think that, you know what, let's put things right and educate people. But at the same time, for that and going against the grain, there's going to be a price to pay. And is it really worth paying when, you know, hold that information to yourself, give it to whoever you feel say necessary, who would want to receive it, and let them know it, so you know it's there and it's out there. But at the same time, is that, you know, you just got to be careful how you move and what you do. But like I say, for me, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. Things like that don't matter. I just keep moving forward. I haven't got time to sit there and plunder on things that are, you know, really unnecessary to life for me in my present situation.
I mean,
yeah, just carry on. Some of the ideas. I think a really great model that that Black people in this country can follow is the Black Panthers, and the idea of doing for self and self-organizing. And look, man, brothers and sisters, we don't need permission to do things for ourselves. We don't need permission. Don't look for permission, because you ain't going to get it.
True.
I run an organisation. We've hardly ever got funding. We never look for funding. People said to me, Saj, apply for funding. I goes, no. Either the community backs this or it won't happen. Because there's constraints that come with that. And if you want to be thinking on a radical kind of level, then you can't be constrained. Now, theologically, as you know, as a Sunni Muslim, Nation of Islam is theologically problematic. But what it did with the idea of Black businesses, it's the same with Nation of Islam, with Black businesses, Black finance, you know, having its own banking system, giving money, giving loans to entrepreneurs, setting up entrepreneurs, doing for self, setting up cooperatives. All of this stuff needs to be done. But it was also contextualized in an education system where they taught their own education to their own people. Right. Now, if you're not teaching your own people your own education, that's your problem. It's not the kids' problem. Right. And let's be real, it's your problem. Now,
anybody know
people need to, like chieftains. Chieftains is good. That model needed to be replicated. Yeah,
it's true.
And there is a reason why we, like Pakistanis, are have got different levels of equality, and why we're a bit more self-organized. Because one, we never had the language. We never spoke English. Yeah. Two, because of our belief, we had to have our own meat. Because of our food, we had to have our own shops to bring our own food in. Yeah. And that's how we self-organized. And that in itself helped us. There's no, and we came over transplanted village by village. So we already knew each other for hundreds of generations. You know, whole streets of Bradford is identical to the original village that was in Kashmir. And people knew each other, people worked together, and people self-organized. But I do need to take an issue, and that is the disease of the original disease is ethnic nationalism. And ethnic nationalism and racism is the same thing. When you believe your community, your ethnic group to be superior than any other ethnic group, but have the power and ability to act upon it. See, it's not just about belief in superiority, but it's having the power to act on it. Now, you see exactly the same thing of this disease. Israelis oppressing Palestinians, the Chinese oppressing the Western Turkmenistan or Tibet, the Turks or the Tibetans. In India, a racist BJP party that believes in ethnic nationalism oppressing its own ethnic groups who have different religion. Now, this, you could go on and look over the world, like with Rwanda, the Tutsis and the Hutsis. It goes on. That disease needs to be challenged. But every community has to self-organize, but it's got to have the strategic view. And the strategic view is we don't need to ask anyone's permission to self-organize. That's a right that our children have. You've got to self-organize. You've got to teach your people your heritage, your history, your identity. But like Brother Alex said, you've got to have the love for everyone else, and you've got to have the love for justice.
That's it.
You've got to have, and so when you're thinking, hang on, the Pakistani community are being attacked by the same form of racism, the Chinese are, let's be strategic, let's reach out and build an alliance that we include the Chinese people, we include the Asian people, we include the South, and we've got the same common enemy. Now, the common enemy knows if he divides all of us, he stays in power. But when all of us come together, we can win. But that does not negate our personal identities, heritage, culture, background, and context. I'm not saying that. I'm saying everyone needs to have that. But we've got to have love for each other and say, look, everyone else, and be strategic and say, look, everyone else is taking a kicking. Let's work together and get justice. And that's important. And I think there's lots of ways we can do it. And I'd say this, every single person here and who's ever listening is a leader. God's ordained you to be a leader. Every man is the shepherd and every woman is a shepherd. Now, we got to understand we don't need permission. We need leadership. And it is a systemic failure in the Black Asian community that our elders haven't consciously built leadership. We do something amazing. 20 years later, we get co-opted into the establishment. We get bought out, we become lords and whatever. But man's closed doors behind him.
100%.
You close doors behind him. You close the schools and the education and the means to progress your people. You've got to 100%. Cut that out.
Yep.
It's true, I hear that. Can we move on to Richard?
Every one of us has got to develop 6 people.
Yep.
Make it 12. Every year got to develop 12 people. Make them conscious, make them awake. This is about justice, and let's work on it together. And if you're not doing that, then get out of the way and let someone else do it.
Correct.
And if you're not helping your people lead, follow, or just get out of the way, and there's a lot of people who look like us in power, they need to get out of the way.
I agree. Truly agree. Richard, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I got 2 questions on here that people, one's put it on the live stream, one sent me a text message, but they kind of relate. So the first one, she's put, thank you for sharing this meeting. I have learned so much, but I have to leave for work purposes. She can watch it later because I'll put it on YouTube. I've not really understood before, as when I look at the person, I see that person. I was getting feedback from somewhere. I see that person, not their colour, creed, sexuality, disability, religion, age, or whatever else they can be discriminated against for. I didn't know the history. History has never interested me to understand a little more. So she's saying thank you to everybody. So that was nice. But then the second one is a question of someone who said they've tuned in. Can I ask if there are any resources? So this is probably something that would be worth putting some links on the Chayah group to share with people. They're asking for websites, books that any of the guys here would recommend in order to gain a greater understanding of the true history of the roots of racism, or reading material that would help someone like them to become more informed. So that's pretty cool, actually. So I just think, as an idea, if anyone's got any ideas, you know, bang some links on it if it's all right with Chayah, and then these people, if they want to read them, that more power to them. You know what I mean?
That's great. Thank you. I've got that. Right, we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to give everybody 3 minutes to talk about some feedback. I'm going to give everyone 3 minutes to talk about where they are and where they think, what input they would like to see to take us further forward, because we can't stay where we are. We'll start with Ramel.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so me personally, I think we have come a long way. If we look at, you know, we only have to go back sort of 27 years ago and look what happened to Stephen Lawrence, and the way he was treated by the police, and the family were made to obviously feel like the perpetrators, not the victims of this terrible crime. And I feel certainly in terms of policing, we have moved on, and there is still a lot of work to do. And a lot of the stuff we are doing is focused on the grassroots, and it's focused on young people, with a lot of the work we've been doing in the communities and starting from primary schools, trying to build those positive relationships, because most people are used to seeing the police when something's gone wrong, and most of their experiences have been negative. And actually, a lot of the work we're doing now is flipping the switch, and we're spending a lot of time in the communities helping people. And if you look at our cadets, which are going to be our future police officers, I've got that belief in them. We've gone from 8% in terms of representation up to 20%. So that already is proof that what we're doing is working. And in the future, these will be, you know, our future police officers. So I certainly think we need a lot more investment in community groups, because they've got a lot of good things they can offer. I think we do need to look at things around schools and, you know, kind of the exclusion rates. That's something we need to look at, and obviously the rehabilitation of offenders as well. That's something we need to look at. So I think we are on the right page. We're moving in the right direction before COVID, and I'm hoping after this we're going to hit the ground running. And I think we all need to work better together, because I think we're all doing our own little things, but actually as a group we're a lot stronger. So that's the police, the community groups, like the voluntary sector, the schools, social care, the councillors, local authority. I think that's the thing we all need to focus on, is working closer together.
Thank you. Sajid?
Firstly, just want to thank you, my sister Chayah, for doing this. And the second thing is, it's a plea. I want to ask the Chayah group, because, you know, I've got lots of love for you, that, you know, between you, me, and everyone else on here, we know probably about another 20 people who are leaders, they have some following, and let's call a meeting and let's get a race agenda in this city that's led by us. Let's call a meeting. Let's be brave. Let's not go. Look, I've got enough love for people want to protest, and it's right and it's the right thing to do. But it's not the only answer, and it will not give us justice. We will only get justice by leaders coming together, setting an agenda for change, agenda that we're gonna pool our time together, pool our money together, and fight for justice, and choose a subject, and we all agree top 3 priorities, and organize and build and teach to get that justice. That's what I want. And if we're serious, look, let's do it. I'm serious. You can do. Let's do it together. Let's all reach out, make a list, get another meeting going offline, and let's work together to deliver change. Because unless we empower ourselves, you haven't got no power to go to the police to negotiate. If we don't empower ourselves, we've got no power to negotiate with the city council and the government. And our power is people, or we've got the people. We need to bring our people together and say, you want our votes, you want this of us, then give us justice. And when Martin Luther King did it, when other people done it, when myself and Pastor Clive Foster, have been organising in this city under the umbrella of Citizens UK, we have got some justice, and it's incremental. So let's use this opportunity for all of us. Get Clive, get other people, and let's build radical justice for our people.
I hear you. Alex?
You're on mute, you're on mute.
Alex, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would second what Sajid just said, to be fair, and I'll be willing to join any sort of proactive group like that. So whenever that's ready to be set up, I'm there 100%. And I'd second again the fact that protests don't really work. I've not really been a part of any of those reparation marches or any of those protests, to be fair, because I think it's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, yeah, if we can get our community, a plea for the, especially for the Black community, to do some research on your history, define racism properly, yeah, and now come together and build economics, Black economics, because this is the only way that we will be able to overturn or combat racism in this country, the UK. So we need to pull together and support Black economics.
Richard? You're muted.
You tried to shut me up then. Right. Keep doing what we're all doing. Get other people joining in and doing it. My community group, Stapleford Community Group, the strapline says bringing unity to the community. And then the Zulu Nation thing is peace, unity, love, and having fun. That's the kind of things we've got to keep doing and working together. None of this, as I said earlier, none of this boundary stuff like can't work with you because you're not in my area. We've got to do some joined up thinking, joined up working, and just keep helping people and doing what we're all doing. And you know, thank you to all of you for what you're all doing, because you're all amazing people. That's why you're on this video. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting your corner, and just keep making a difference in the communities that we're all in. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerome?
Yeah, love the closing points from everyone thus far. I think there is a lot to be said for unity. Hands up, I would love to be some organize all of the organizations that I'm having together, along with the organizations of which I'm in touch with. Race will be a topic, mental health will be a topic, Black economics. From a distance, Alex, I respect it, and I do see it, and I do see, I'm here processing everything of which has been spoken about, and I do see the necessity for us to be able to come together as a race. But in closing, we need to focus on love. We need to focus on peace, and we need to focus on bringing things together in order to actually stand together in the long run as one race.
Thank you. And Justin?
Well, yeah, I'd like to just like to say thank you to everyone for the knowledge that I've gained today, first of all. And for me, it's just about putting the work in on the youths, making them understand, educating them. Yeah, and I say keep putting them in the right space, the right direction. Let them know that, you know, everybody's not narrow-minded, and you know what, this is the way forward. But also, what I want to do and what everybody goes on about blacks, goes on about whites and that. But I haven't really heard anybody to talk about mixed race. I'm sat here, you know, I can say I'm white, I can say that I'm black, but you know what, I'm mixed race. So at the end of the day, dual heritage is going to be a big thing for me coming into this race. So when I'm stood there with all of you lot, supporting the banner, supporting the cause, key and personal to me, I'm going to be focusing on the mixed race people within society, because you know what, even though everybody is talking about race, you know, it's mixed race people, we're not getting no shout out, we're not getting no mention, but you know, we suffer it from both directions, because, you know, somebody might think you were, and say that you're half-breed, and people ain't recognizing, that mixed race people are suffering the same set as the black person, as the white person, as the Asian person. So, yeah, but once again, thank you everybody for your knowledge. It's much appreciated.
Justin, just to address what you said, just to address what you're saying, there is a project in Nottingham called Mixed Foundations. Okay. And they're also looking at this agenda. So it's not that it's being overlooked, it is already been addressed.
Can I just say that
we need to get out there and emphasize it more, because like I say, I've been doing, obviously I haven't been to too many places, but that out there and shove it out there and let people know that there's this organisation for mixed race people, and thank you for that, Messiah. Yeah.
Okay. Could I just say that mixed race dual heritage children are black?
To society they are, yeah.
There's no confusion in that. Yeah, I've got a dual heritage son, yeah, and I've told him he's black. His mum knows he's black, and that is who he is. Yeah, they should.
Yeah,
any dual heritage person.
I would disagree with that
he's
because
black. That's it.
I know that I'm mixed raced. Yeah, I know that I'm mixed raced. I'm not black because my mom's white, so I could never be black. I've got the blood running through my veins of a white man. And I've got the blood running through my veins of a black man. So I can't say that I'm black because you know what? I've got white blood in me, so that therefore I'll be telling a lie. So to be dual heritage and to tell somebody that you're this when really they're not, are you leading them down the wrong path and giving them misinformation? Because at the end of the day, they've got even though
black,
I know what you're
just
okay,
we're
closing.
That's it.
We're closing. So
sure?
this is probably a conversation for another time.
You told me that.
Okay, so I want to say thank you to you all. And for me, it's about respecting the human race. Every life matters, and it's about respecting the human race. And at Chayah, our strapline is, come on, Justin, dream it, believe it, and achieve it. And anything we want, you can get.
Anything
so I'm gonna say thank you to all of you. It's been a pleasure. I hope, and to those in Facebook land, I hope you've learned something and you'll share what you've learned. Whether it's been good or bad, share it, because we need to know how everybody feels out there. And thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. God bless.
Peace and love. Stay blessed, everyone.
All right.
Bye.